I guess this story don't start with some loser boy that gets betrayed and becomes stronger from revenge. This is a MC that was reincarnated as a tree. He was a loser though, just like me and you behind that screen of yours. But he does get something we don't have in Outworld, and it's a system. We all wish we had a solo leaving system like Outboy Jean Woo, so we can clap some fine blonde or Asian girls. Am I wrong? But the story starts off with, an event began in a huge gorge in the forest, in which the rabbit lives. He felt something strange. He immediately turned and looked in that direction. A bright light was coming from that side, which was coming from that side, which was coming from a lonely tree. Suddenly a sphere appeared from the tree trunk. Sphere's eyes lit up brightly, after which the protagonist began to cough. He began to cough, look around, and panic, realizing that this was not his home. The protagonist looked around the forest, looking in the other direction of the forest. He tried to understand how he ended up here. Suddenly his attention was drawn to a small bee, because of which he saw vines. The protagonist screamed in horror, assuming that his hair had become so coarse and also covered with leaves. But then he squinted, trying to understand if this was a strange dream. After that, the protagonist disappeared into the tree again, deciding to sleep, hoping that as soon as he wakes up, everything will return to normal. But time passed, and nothing happened near the tree. The tree trunk shook when the protagonist realized that he had turned into a tree. The tree seemed to bend sadly, after which the protagonist said that the last thing he remembered was how he began to choke. Tu's eye widened in horror when he realized that he had died. He climbed out of the tree trunk again, shocking the rabbit, while asking himself why he had been reborn as a tree, because usually when they were reborn, everyone turned into handsome men with a huge harem. Tu involuntarily remembered himself and began to regret that now, without arms, he would not even be able to show how he could do a one-armed pull-up. A tear formed near his eye as he began to whine and be sad about his appearance. But a second later, Tu stopped being sad, realizing something looking at the forest. In front of him, the guy assumed that it was unusual because the trees had no eyes, and yet he saw and in all directions. Then the guy looked at the huge gorge, assuming that its height was several hundred meters. Tu frowned, not knowing what to do. Then he slightly moved the vines, feeling that he also had a charm that was not felt. It was not so much like the ability to catch smells, but rather like perception. The protagonist began to examine the branches and began to control one of them. He could not take full control of the rest. He raised a vine above himself and then tried to control another one, but this only caused wild pain. Looking at the trembling branch, the protagonist said that he had a feeling as if the branches were legs that had gone numb after sitting for too long. Tu looked at the forest again, hearing the roar of a wild animal, and if one of them decided to come here and break him, he would not be able to drive it away at all. Tu was horrified to imagine how just one woodpecker would destroy him, but a moment later he saw an airplane in the sky and claimed in surprise. Squinting, Tu began to guess what era he found himself in. But a second later, the bees flying around enraged him. Out of anger, he attacked them with a branch and killed them. When the beast died, the system notified TSU of a double murder. The protagonist opened his eyes in surprise, after which he praised himself with affection. After some time, the protagonist looked at the system windows, according to which he received 0.2 evolution points for killing bees. The system windows provided all the information about the protagonist, one of whose abilities gave 0.1 evolution points daily for absorbing sunlight. While the protagonist was thinking about the fact that his name remained the same, the system asked him if he wanted to use evolution points. Tu frowned slightly, realizing that he received 0.1 evolution points for killing the bee, and for standing here every day, he would also only receive 0.1. After the protagonist agreed, the system offered him to strengthen a branch that took only 0.1 points for strengthening. The protagonist did not immediately agree, deciding to think everything through carefully and not spend all the points thoughtlessly. But a moment later, he heard eerie sounds from the forest, after which he immediately strengthened 2 branches and took control of them. The system immediately notified him of this, after which Tu began to wave his branches and rejoice. He smiled maliciously with joy. He again called up the system window and happily said that since he had a system, he had nothing to worry about. After that, the protagonist turned his attention to the hive and immediately decided to attack him with a scream, telling the bees to die and become his evolution points. Soon the sounds of flying bees were heard in the forest. Take us half a month forward to the moment when the protagonist already controlled all his branches. He squinted, saying that since all the branches were strengthened, he was now a superhero. After that, the guy involuntarily looked at the cobblestone nearby and gathered all his branches into one, after which he attacked the cobblestone nearby and gathered all his branches into one, after which attacking the cobblestone with them. But the branches stopped, but even so the blow caused a powerful gust of wind. Due to the impulse, part of the cobblestone was destroyed. The protagonist stared at this in amazement. He looked intently at the branches that destroyed part of the cobblestone without even touching it. The protagonist stroked himself. I have no idea why, bro, trying to stroke a non-existent beard with a branch, and then said that this technique can become a very deadly weapon. He can now kill wolves and foxes with one blow. Siu began to examine himself and noticed that he had grown a little and was happy because ordinary trees hardly have the growth speed that he had. In addition, the guy felt how his roots were continuously absorbing the energy of the earth. Siu was happy looking at his branches. Even without doing anything, he was becoming stronger, and no living creature was initially able to compare with trees in absorption speed. And he also had something that he could never gain as a human. The protagonist looked at his roots and said that he had an extremely long lifespan. Now he could forget about illness, forget about fatigue. His eye widened slightly when Siu said that his lifespan would increase as he strengthened. He hoped one day he would become so huge that he would be called the World Tree. The protagonist happily played with vines, saying that his path to becoming a god was beginning because he did not need to go to work or study. Suddenly, he heard the chirping of chicks and was frightened. In the crown of the protagonist, there was a nest of paragon falcons where the chicks hatched. Siu remembered how a few days ago he broke a branch blocking the sun. Then he frowned. He stared at the chicks and realized that they were paragon falcons, medium-sized birds of prey. The length of an adult individual reaches from 41 to 50 centimeters, and the wingspan is more than 1 meter. Moreover, during a high-altitude dive, it can reach speeds of up to 360 kilometers per hour. The protagonist squeezed resin from the branch, thinking that even the maximum speed of a cheetah is only 120 kilometers per hour. The protagonist involuntarily looked at the gorge and began to say that this world was full of mutants, and there was no doubt that he was not the only one of his kind here. Siu narrowed his eyes, realizing that his only flaw now was his lack of skills useful in the air, and if he could tame the chicks and use them for his own benefit in this world, it would be tantamount to gaining additional power. Siu introduced himself as a human and said that since his situation had turned out this way, and he was also powerless to change anything, this was a hard-won chance for a second life. The protagonist narrowed his eyes, saying that this time he would never miss this chance and would survive no matter what it cost him, regardless of any dangers that this world concealed. After which, Siu looked at the gorge. At this time, on one of the peaks of the gorge, wolves were wildly devouring their prey, while giant ants destroyed everything in their path. And only the Queen of Farts calmly walked through the forest, which seemed like blades of grass to her. The squirrel shuddered while devouring the fruits of the tree. The squirrel shuddered while devouring the fruits of the tree. She saw huge fingers grasping a tree nearby, after which the creature's hand tore the tree out by the roots. The huge monkey immediately threw the tree into its mouth. At this time, some creature was moving through the forest at great speed, chopping down trees along the way. After it, only a dent in the ground and fell trees remained. The culprit was a huge snake with an axe on its head and at the end of its tail. It stretched up slightly, examining the area. And only hares in this forest calmly ran along the path. One of them jumped over a fallen tree, and the protagonist immediately caught it with its branch. The system notified him of receiving 0.6 evolution points for the rabbit. Seeing his evolution points, the protagonist frowned, saying that he had not hunted anyone for a long time. After that, the guy brought the rabbit to the chicks, and they immediately began to devour it. The protagonist felt uneasy about how the chicks were gobbling up the rabbit. Suddenly, the system notified him of receiving 0.1 points by absorbing light, which made the protagonist very happy, because now he had a whole unit. Siu looked at the branches and said that he had already strengthened them all, and now it was time to strengthen the roots. Siu looked at the system window where it was clear that he had not strengthened any of the 9 roots in the trunk, yet looking at the route, the guy expressed his surprise. He did not expect that one route would require a whole evolution point from it. Imagining how he traveled thanks to the evolved roots, Siu smiled widely. A moment later, the system asked the protagonist whether to strengthen the root. After receiving confirmation, one of the roots brightly glowed underground. Siu suddenly felt a wild pain and began to cry. His root began to break through to the surface, and the vines flew up due to the pain. Even the chicks in the nest were horrified. Soon the protagonist began to exhale, feeling relief. Sweat poured down from him, as he compared the pain to the pain of being drilled. After thinking, the protagonist began to lift the root. He completely tore the root out from under the ground and began to rejoice. The protagonist wrapped it around himself, rejoicing at its strength. Then Tsiu put his root underground, saying that now he could freely move both the branches and the roots, but could he move the trunk? The protagonist immediately decided to try and slightly move the trunk. As soon as he moved slightly, he felt terrible pain. The protagonist instantly jumped up and began to scream and roar. The protagonist began to examine himself and curse, after which he frowned, saying that this pain could not even be compared to a drill. Looking at the trunk, Tsiu said that the Adon reinforced roots served as protection for the trunk, and it was now like his heart, so he could not neglect protection. After Tsuyu looked at his reinforced route and said that in case of unforeseen situations, it could also serve as his weapon with the greatest killing power. A second later, the root burst into the soil. The protagonist decided to hide it for a while. Looking at the forest in front of him, he became nervous. Now he had no evolution points, and he would have to collect everything from scratch. Suddenly, the bushes moved, frightening Tsiu. He took control of the branches in an instant and became wary. Moving the bushes aside, the protagonist saw a wounded fox. This greatly surprised the protagonist. Tsiu even involuntarily touched it, but he immediately removed the branch when the fox whined. Frowning, the protagonist assumed that the fox was poisoned since its wound turned black. It would help him his evolution points, but it definitely could not be given to Paragon falcons as food. Suddenly, the system informed the protagonist about the juice contained in its branches, which had healing properties, and after use the branch would lose its strengthening effect and return to its normal state. Looking at one of the branches, the protagonist decided to heal the fox and remove the poison from it, and then kill it. Rejoicing in his genius, he brought the branch to the fox. A drop of its juice fell on the fox. The system immediately notified Tsiu about the detection and elimination of toxin in the creature, after which it notified about the stopping of bleeding in the launch of the healing process. The protagonist looked at his branch and was happy, saying that now he is the embodiment of a great doctor. The fox got up after a couple of minutes. The protagonist pointed the branches at her, saying that since the poison was neutralized, it was time to kill her. Suddenly, the fox looked at Tsiu with admiration, then she began to rub against him, very surprised. The protagonist screamed, telling the fox not to do this, because she is just a fox. But she did not react in any way, and only closed her eyes. Tsiu was saddened seeing the fox in such a state. But a moment later, he began to be touched. He picked up the fox and began to stroke it. He liked this fox and decided not to kill it. Looking at the fox, he picked up the protagonist, said that its eyes were like rubies and its fur was like silk. Suddenly, the fox began to glow brightly. A moment later, the system notified the protagonist about the beginning of the evolution of the fox, which, having absorbed his juice, launched this process. Soon the bright light disappeared, revealing a fox whose tail and fur seemed to be covered in flames. A system window with its characteristics also appeared above it. Tsiu began to shout joyfully, saying that the fox had become even more beautiful. But a moment later, he noticed the stage of the fox written on the system window. The protagonist immediately asked the system to open the properties page. The protagonist looked closely and saw that his own stage was already the initial 9th stage too. He closed the system window, saying that he didn't even know when the stage evaluation line appeared there, and he was also at the 9th stage of the initial stage. Looking closely at the Scarlet Fox, the protagonist thought that his strength was only 5 stages higher than the Scarlet Fox's, and as far as he understood, his life essence was not only able to heal wounds, but also accelerate the development of creatures. Tsiu slightly narrowed his eyes, realizing that he would now be able to understand the difference between himself and his opponents. The protagonist sighed, saying that his life had become different now. The protagonist looked at the fox and asked her how she ended up here and whether people had hunted her. After all, the hole in her body resembled an arrow wound. Despondent Tsiu thought that after these days he was still not mentally prepared to meet people. Looking up at the sky, Tsiu understood that if he met a radical who mistook him for a demonic tree, he would not survive, because he had nothing to counter machine guns and missiles with. Suddenly, the fox jumped to the side. The protagonist looked to the side, realizing that someone was there. 2 girls were approaching him. The protagonist became wary when he saw people. He immediately hid in his trunk. Tsiu was nervous because of the people who came. Suddenly, they began to approach him, and call him dad. But the protagonist did not move even when they said that they came to see him. He only slightly moved the branches and was puzzled. We all would be hiding if this shit happened to us, man. At this time, a loud scream was heard in one part of the forest. Soon treats were placed in front of the protagonist. Two girls prayed, standing in front of him. Suyu looked up at the sky, telling himself that he never thought that their father, it turns out, rests right under his roots. The little snake was watching from the side all this time. The youngest of the sisters grabbed the apple, saying that dad would never refuse her anyway. The protagonist became sad, mentally telling the girl to leave quickly. Suddenly, the younger sister pulled the older one to swim. The protagonist slightly leaned out of the trunk, looking after the girls. Soon, one of the sisters found herself in the lake and called her sister. The older one threw off her clothes. After that, she went into the lake. She modestly stood in the middle of the lake, getting used to the water. The entire trunk of the protagonist trembled with anticipation. He was very angry at the tree blocking his view of the lake. He is just like us. After looking at the roots, the protagonist decided to move a little. But as soon as he moved, he felt severe pain, because of which he stretched out and screamed loudly in pain. Looking forward and trembling, the protagonist became very sad. Later, he noticed a fox lying nearby. Tiu was glad when the girls started leaving here. He slightly opened the trunk, telling them not to come after him. Suddenly, one of the sisters stopped, after which they looked at Tiu, saying that they would come to see him again. Seeing this, the protagonist was touched. All this time, the hatchling of the axe snake was watching the girls. The events in the gorge take us a week ahead. A huge bird screamed furiously. Paragon falcons enveloped in energy rushed at this bird. Using a high-altitude dive, they all attacked their enemy. But he, covering himself with his wings, turned out to be safe. The golden eagle only grinned and looked at the paragon falcons. A moment later, a system window appeared with a full list of the golden eagle's characteristics, who rushed forward with a wild cry. His cry deafened the paragon falcons, forcing them to stop. But at that moment, the scarlet fox jumped on him from behind and bit into him with her jaw. Unexpectedly, the golden eagle easily threw off the fox, after which it grabbed it with its claws and dived down, hoping to kill the enemy. The fox was seriously injured because of this. The golden eagle opened its beak, deciding to kill it. But a moment later, its anger expanded when it saw something. It stared at a tree nearby and froze. The golden eagle screamed furiously, feeling the threat. But the bird did not have time to do anything when the protagonist dealt a powerful blow. A deep wound appeared on the golden eagle's body, and the system immediately notified about the destruction of the golden eagle of the 7th stage. The protagonist happily looked at the system window, informing him about receiving 70 evolution points. During these 2 weeks, he fed his paragon falcons with the essence of life, because of which they were able to grow so big in such a short time. When the fox stood up and started to approach him, the protagonist praised them for their successful work. Then he looked at the corpse of the golden eagle and said that it had been circling in the air for a week, trying to find an opportunity for a surprise attack. The protagonist frowned, deciding to suppress his aura, since it was quite possible that it was what attracted this golden eagle. Being only at the 7th stage, he caused a lot of damage, and there could be other monsters of the same level as the protagonist. Siu widened his eyes in horror and decided to become stronger. Then he looked at the gorge and said that there were creatures here that could kill him with one blow, and he should not let his guard down under any circumstances. The fox with a flaming tail came closer. For Paragon falcon sat on a tree branch looking in one direction. The protagonist said that this did not only concern him, they also needed to continuously strengthen. He squeezed one of his branches similar to a fist, saying that now he had 70 evolution points, so he could strengthen again. The Paragon falcon put his claws forward and spread his wings, and the scarlet fox looked away. The protagonist thought that at this moment 8 of his birds had reached the 3rd stage of the initial stage, and the fox had reached the 4th stage. He was very interested to see what kind of development they would achieve when they entered the 1st stage. Tiu put out his blue branches, from which drops of green liquid flowed into the animals' mouths, saying that they needed to spend money on strengthening them. In the status window, there was a message that the process of life essence was currently taking place. A liquid was being generated inside the body that could accelerate the development of living beings. I think we all need this after leg day at the gym. A bright flash appeared above the tree. The protagonist looked up, telling everyone to remain calm. The ground shook, some of it sank below the level, raising streams of wind and dust into the air. In the depths of the curtain of dust, a bright light of eyes was visible. The protagonist arched his eyebrows looking at the broken branches. A system warning appeared that the branch was lost because the root was broken. A giant snake appeared among the broken trees, its eyes shining brightly in the shadows. She wrapped her tail around the broken branches of the blue tree. The protagonist mentally screamed, realizing that 26 branches had been cut off. Now only 24 remain. The inner beige color of the blue tree was visible in the place of the cut branch. He narrowed his eyes and looked up, thinking that contrary to expectations, he was unable to detect the presence of the enemy. He wondered if he had relaxed too much after the recent victory, but immediately realized that it was because this animal also knew how to hide its aura. The giant yellow eyes of the snake looked straight at him. The protagonist frowned and called out the energy flows around him, telling the system to open the creation property panel. The giant monster's eyes shone in the rising dust curtain. The status window showed that it was an axe snake stage initial to generate properties perfectly able to hide its aura. Special ability, huge blade-like teeth that could easily bite through copper sheets, battle axe, and axe-shaped tail that could cut through everything in its path. It was the highest danger to plants. The protagonist screamed and frowned when he learned that this was the 9th stage of animal evolution. He paid attention to the last lines of the information provided. Siu narrowed his eyes, realizing that he was in trouble because this creature had come for his soul on purpose. The scarlet fox opened his mouth wide, looking at the snake. It gritted its teeth and looked ahead from under its brows. The axe snake grabbed it with its sharp fangs. The creature brought its tail to its mouth, which contained the branches of the tree. The snake opened its mouth, slowly absorbing them. The protagonist frowned, mentally calling the monster a plague. The axe snake sharply widened its eyes and released streams of steam from its nasal passages. The creature quickly directed its head down. The tree twitched in fear. Du opened his eyes wide, ordering the animals to dodge. The fox behind him, prepared for battle. Axe snake left a trail of dust in the air. The monster's eyes opened wide. The protagonist frowned, putting red roots to the creature's head. He used the second root enhancement. The system notified that 2 of the 9 roots were enhanced. The evolution points are 69. Siu narrowed his eyes, thinking that he was in trouble because this was a pretty serious onslaught. He reached out to the snake with his branches, telling them not to underestimate him because he was also at the 9th stage. Even if he had to fight in close combat, he would not be afraid of the creature. The axe snake opened its mouth wide, pointing its axe-shaped tail at him, which shone like a blade. The protagonist used the 3rd route enhancement. 3 red branches intertwined with each other. The system notified that 3 roots out of 9 were enhanced. The evolution points were 68. The roots grabbed the body of the giant snake, not allowing it to move. It opened its mouth wide and widened its eyes. Siu frowned, ordering all the roots to be enhanced. Long red roots began to crawl out from under the ground where the blue tree was. The system reported that all 9 roots were enhanced. They quickly moved forward. The protagonist turned his attention to the most vulnerable part of the body of the captured monster, thinking that in a fight with a snake the main thing is to aim for its weak spot, so he will use this chance to take its life. Siu narrowed his brightly shining eyes, ordering the creature to get out of his territory. The axe snake closed its eyes and opened its mouth wide, screaming shrilly. The roots of the tree rushed to the place on the animal's body that the protagonist noticed. Streams of blood gushed out from the snake's open mouth. Siu arched his eyebrows in surprise. He noticed that he did not pierce the monster, but he managed to leave a dent on the snake's body. The giant axe snake looked down at him. Its upper body was darkened, but its eyes continued to shine brightly. The protagonist did not know what to do because it could easily cut him down, but he could not pierce the creature lowered its head, tiredly, drops of blood dripping from its slightly open mouth. It frowned, looking down. Siu released more red roots coming out of the ground at the snake in front of him, thinking that he couldn't show her fear, so he had to release a more powerful bloodlust. The axe snake closed its mouth and looked forward, its yellow eyes shining brightly. The giant monster suddenly stopped and turned to the other side. The axe snake quickly headed in the opposite direction. Blue streams of energy like thin branches emanated from the tree. They sank down tiredly. Blue light fell on the sharp branches of the tree. Siu frowned, sweat dripping off him. He was sure that he would die right here. The tree was in the center of a small field which had numerous dents and cracks. The animals made loud noises as they approached Siu. He narrowed his eyes, asking them not to worry about him. He was fine, but the fact that he let the snake escape would definitely come back to haunt him in the future. There was still a curtain of raised dust above the tops of the green trees. The protagonist frowned, saying that today's situation could only be blamed on his weakness, so he had to become stronger and do it quickly. He imagined a sharp blade on the monster's head, saying that after tasting its energy, the axe snake would definitely become stronger and return again. And when that happened, there would be nothing left for him to do but wait for death in the same place. There was a chip on his sphere. He was saying that if he forcefully strengthened the 8 remaining roots, his base would crack at the seams. It would be a disaster. A loud sound was heard. He narrowed his eyes. The system notified that the conditions for transition to the first stage had been reached. 10 evolution points were required for the transition. There was a question whether the hero was ready to begin the transition. 2 answer options appeared in front of him: yes and no. He opened his eyes in surprise. 2 eyes shone brightly. He said that everything turned out as he expected. After the initial stage, the first one immediately follows, then the second and third. The Scarlet Fox opened her eyes wide. The protagonist frowned, imagining a tree trunk with a scary face, saying that this was good. But he needed to become much stronger because he did not want to relive today's failure again. See, you clicked on the answer option yes. The system reported the start of the evolution process. A bright light appeared around the tree. It was a continuous evolution. In place of the cut branch, a bright silhouette of a new one appeared. The thin, bright branches intertwined with each other. It was a continuous evolution, meaning continuous strengthening. In order to survive in a world where the strong devour the weak, from an ordinary tree, it will begin a continuous evolution to something much more majestic. Strong currents of wind pondered the tree and the fox standing next to it. Paragen falcons soared in the sky, spreading their wings wide. The tail of the scarlet fox brightly shone with fire. Rays of bright light passed between the tree trunks. From the green top of the tree, blue streams of energy emerged, similar to elastic branches. Siu narrowed his eyes, looking ahead. The tree trunk consisted of thick branches that had grown together, and bright green vines were hanging down from the top. The system reported that Siu is now an abnormal willow with a lifespan of 0.4 out of 200 years, evolution points of 51 in stage 1. The protagonist looked up, saying that all the severed branches had grown back and his body had grown larger. The status window reported that the remaining evolution points were 51. The fox took a step forward and froze. The system reported that she was an abnormal scarlet fox. At the initial stage, her tail was shining with a bright flame. A flock of Paragen falcons soared in the sky. Red feathers had appeared on their heads. The status window reported that there were 8 abnormal Parager falcons at the initial stage. Looked ahead, saying that the light that appeared during evolution had not only affected him, the fox and the Paragen falcons had also evolved after him. Everything that happened to him would affect them too. A flock of Paragon falcons were sitting on a tree branch. Tiu looked at them, ordering the 8 of them to go on reconnaissance and find out where this snake had gone. Bright yellow rays of light were coming out from the green top of the tree. The protagonist's eyes widened in surprise. He noticed that their speed had increased in one go, like a bullet being fired. The flock of birds were hovering over the high cliff in the winding river. The protagonist thought that it was quite possible that now they could easily pierce the skin of any creature at the same level as the golden eagle had done recently. Tiu looked to the side, noticing that in addition to them, the fox must have become much stronger. The flames were shining brightly around the scarlet fox. The system reported that the animal was at the initial stage. The hero, even with the naked eye, could feel the energy streams continuously spreading from it. He narrowed his eyes, looking ahead. Green vines were hanging down from the top of the tree. The protagonist ordered to open in his characteristics panel. Since he had reached the first stage, he should probably have received additional abilities or attributes. Suddenly, a loud cry for help was heard too, and the scarlet fox widened their eyes in surprise. The animal turned its head. The girls opened their mouths wide, screaming hysterically. The 2 heroines ran forward, running out of the dusty curtain. Yu opened his eyes in surprise, not understanding why this couple was here again. A crowd of animals were chasing the girls, among which were a giraffe, a leopard, a monkey bats, and many others. This gotta be a OG filler episode from One Piece. Zing opened her mouth and eyes wide, asking why they were chasing them. Zing, who was lying next to her, furrowed her brows, saying that she wanted to know the same thing. The animals opened their giant mouths wide, showing their teeth. The protagonist narrowed his eyes, saying that the animals were attracted here by the aura spreading from the light during the process of evolution, because for them, it was like a divine elixir, both for the golden eagle and for the axe snake. But this did not mean that he would allow them to ruin his plans. There were 2 intertwined trunks around the protagonist's sphere. The animals' eyes opened wide. The boar was catching up with the fleeing girls. They opened their mouths in fear. A curtain of dust appeared in front of the animals. They stopped abruptly. The two girls were thrown into the air by the shock wave. They widened their eyes in surprise and looked forward. The raised dust slowly settled. A scarlet fox appeared in front, its tail shining with bright tongues of flame. Behind it lay a motionless boar. Zohong widened his eyes, turning back. Xing and Sing held hands in fear and screamed. The scarlet fox raised its tail, looking at the animals in front of it. Like bullets, the Paragon falcons launched their attacks, leaving a bright yellow trail behind them and piercing the heads of the giant animals. A flock of birds flew in the sky above. Zohong widened her eyes in surprise and raised her head, noticing that this fox and the Paragon falcons came to their aid. Xing, standing next to her, opened her mouth in fear. The crowd of animals, including a wolf with red eyes and a rhinoceros, stopped. The protagonist realized that they were afraid to approach. Tiu narrowed his eyes, telling the elder and the fox to retreat because it was time for him to join the fight. The sphere shone brightly with purple light. The Paragon falcon turned its head back. Zohong's eyes widened. The two sisters looked back worriedly. Red roots were coming out of the ground. The hero said that he wanted each of them to realize what a monster the one they had chosen as their opponent was. They rose higher, releasing dust into the air. The roots intertwined in the air. The animals looked at it in surprise. The tree emitted a bright glow. The vines began to shine, and the maroon roots moved forward. The hero said that there would be a massacre today. Zio King raised her hands in front of her in fear and screamed. Xiu's eyes shone brightly. He ordered them to attack in a crowd. The animals, shining with furious eyes, opened their mouths wide, showing their teeth. A crowd of creatures approached the tree from all sides. The leopard opened its mouth, showing its sharp teeth. The protagonist frowned. A maroon stream of energy pierced his head. The drops of blood hit the bright sphere. The hero frowned and said that today they would meet their death. The hippopotamus opened his mouth and ran forward furiously, causing the ground beneath him to shake. A bright red root appeared from under the ground right in front of him. The system reported that the mutated hippopotamus was destroyed. Evolution points were 50. The status windows appeared one after another, reporting that the mutated rat was destroyed. 20 evolution points were received. The rhinoceros was destroyed. 30 evolution points were received. The steppe giraffe was also destroyed. 20 evolution points were received. The boar was destroyed. 10 evolution points were received. Between the animals whose eyes were wide open, there were maroon tree roots squeezed and piercing their bodies. The bat flew through the roots, leaving a bright purple trail behind it. It opened its mouth, releasing streams of sound forward. The hero noticed that this was a good speed, but alas, this would not help. The bright sphere looked up. The bat began to lose altitude. A bright yellow flash appeared around it. The system reported that the mutated bat was destroyed. 10 evolution points were received. Sharp maroon roots of the tree rushed towards the animal standing below. He hit it on the back, breaking the ground under the animal's feet. The creature with yellow horns frowned, resting his forehead on the tree root. The protagonist frowned. He noticed that the creature had withstood the attack. Perhaps it was not worth killing them all. Some of the strongest of them could be left alive and later develop. He squeezed the animal with the roots. It screamed shrilly, opening its mouth wide. Several more animals were tightly fixed in the roots. Red branches captured the crane. Xiu's eyes opened wide, and he said that the rest would die. Long maroon roots swirled around the group of animals, raising dust and the creatures themselves into the air. There was a dark night sky above of the area. 8 animals were fixed in the air by their roots, and wind currents moved along the ground around the tree. The sphere in the tree trunk shone brightly. The hero noticed that the deed was done, and now he needed to decide what to do with the girls. The scarlet fox froze, looking at the immobilized animals. Xialing was lying on Zio King. The hero said that if he let them go, his secret would be revealed, and if he killed them, he could be dubbed a demonic tree, because the disappearance of 2 people could not go unnoticed and attract more people here, and eventually an entire army could come. He imagined a crowd of military men in uniform. The protagonist imagined himself and a woman standing next to him with a child, who said that this tree was very ugly. He thought that the worst thing would be if they moved him to a botanical garden. So opened his eyes wide, thinking that there was another option. If he did this, perhaps everything would work out. Clouds slowly floated across the night sky. The girl opened her eyes slightly. She widened her eyes in fear and put her hands in front of her, seeing that the sphere was looking at her with displeasure. The girls joined hands, shouting that the root was approaching them. It began to wriggle. Fortunately, the protagonist was a human in his past life, and knew how to write the root, began to draw hieroglyphs on the ground. The two sisters widened their eyes in surprise. Tzu opened his bright eyes wide. Beads of sweat were running down the sphere. He mentally asked them to hurry up and believe in the situation, that their father had become a willow, that he had saved their lives at the moment of danger, so they needed to quickly believe in it. He frowned, thinking that if the plan failed, he would have no other choice. The girl pursed her lips nervously. Xing opened her mouth wide, asking what her name was and what her main secret was. The protagonist called the system. It immediately gave out information about the two girls standing in front of the tree. On the left was Xing. She was 14 years old. The main secret was that she loved Nui from the neighboring village. On the right was Xing, her brows furrowed in fear. She was 14 years old. She dropped out of school and started working to support and take care of her younger sister and grandfather. The tip of the tree root drew a hieroglyph on the ground. The girl screamed loudly, embarrassedly pressing her palms to her ears. Xing looked at her in surprise, asking if this was really that Eru from the neighboring village. Xing frowned, shouting that she was not in love with him. She frowned sadly. Tears appeared in her eyes. The girl said that she had only told her father about this. The hero looked up, moving the vines. The other day, when he was bored, he made a couple of hairpins from the branches. He does not know what prompted him to do this. The vines took out 2 wooden pins. The protagonist handed them to the girls standing in front. He thought that people always have special feelings for the dead, both fear and longing, so the fact that their father was buried under the roots of Tiu was predetermined by fate. Balls of bright energy were flying near the tree. The sick man was lying on the bed, asking Xing for forgiveness. He told her to look after her grandfather and sister. Tears appeared in the girl's eyes, perhaps even without noticing it. The streams of life and time merge. He imagined the image of a man lying underground, pierced by the roots of a tree. Xing arched her eyebrows when the protagonist said that she worked all her life and did not spare herself, even quit school for her sister. A bright vine stroked her head. Tzu narrowed his eyes happily, saying that she tried hard. He thought that perhaps during this fusion his father's soul and his own had merged. This could not be ruled out. Either. Zoken cried, gritting her teeth. The girl stood in front of the tree. The Paragen falcon sat on a rock. The scarlet fox sat next to it. Its tail was burning brightly with flames. The girl frowned, saying that many unimaginable things had happened in these 2 months. Last month, the passenger plane flew into a flock of crows and disappeared. The search failed to find its wreckage, and also a shadow that appeared in the Pacific Ocean swallowed a private cruise liner. A small fire was burning in front of the tree. The girl continued to say that experts said that an unknown matter had appeared in the atmosphere, and it was this matter that gave rise to a new round of evolution of living beings around the world. In the East, this matter was called spiritual energy, and in the West, mana. She presented a magic staff with a precious stone. Tzu narrowed his eyes, saying that he didn't even think that so many things had happened in the outside world. Xing turned her head, saying that she didn't believe what the news said, but now she did. A sweet smile appeared on the girl's face. The male lead looked at her shyly, and his cheeks blushed. Suddenly his eyes widened. The girl walked up to the wolves in the tree root cage, saying that the bag contained the remains of the animals they had recently killed for dinner. The male lead frowned and screamed. The animals opened their mouths wide, drooling from thirst for food, and growled menacingly. Behind the girl was the shadow of an animal with brightly shining eyes. The scarlet fox frowned. The pack of wolves whined in fear and backed away. There was a smile in the wolf's mouth. Zal and clapped her hands happily and turned to Zong, saying that they would now obediently eat. The protagonist noticed that the girl really knew how to win people over. He opened his eyes wide, saying that he had only recently caught these alpha wolves. He wondered if she really dared to tease them. Although under the fox's supervision, it was unlikely that anything would happen. Do not count these 4 wolves. He also captured a white crane and also a monkey. If he had not wrapped it tightly, it would undoubtedly have been the one to raise is the biggest fuss. The listed animals were captured by vines. They were hanging in the air. A large buffalo was sleeping near the tree trunk on which the girl fell asleep. This animal turned out to be too obedient. Realizing that he had no chance in a fight, he just took and calmly lay down. The honey badger with light fur nervously moved his paws. The hero said that this was undoubtedly the biggest headache. It was making noise incessantly. It did not understand how the animal ended up here, because they usually live in Southwest Asia and Africa. But the hero will still have time to deal with the newcomers, because now there is a more important matter. The scarlet fox watched the cage. The vines held the animals in the air. The protagonist ordered to open the properties panel. The status window showed information that Tzu is an abnormal willow. His lifespan is 0.6 out of 200 evolution points. are 149 Stage 1. Abilities Mutated Branches 50 out of 50 Mutated Roots 9 out of 9 Essence of Life, a special liquid, is born inside the body capable of accelerating the development of living beings and healing their wounds. Degenerate Properties Super Regeneration, a terrifying innate ability available only to plants passive. First, daily absorption of sunlight brings 1 evolution point. Second, the destruction of living beings adds evolution points. Fog Barrier, the ability to immerse oneself in thick fog, spreading fog in a radius of several kilometers. Hallucinogen, the ability to imbue fog in branches with a psychedelic effect to disorient living beings. The protagonist's eyes widened. He said that a new wave of enhancement was beginning. Tu eyes on brightly as he said that not only had he himself as such reached the first stage, his abilities could also be enhanced. Information about available enhancements appeared on the green screen. The system also reported on innate properties. There were 2 bright stripes in front of the sphere, and Tu said that he only needed the 149 evolution points. He had to raise his strength 1 step higher. The system provided information about the ability Fog Barrier and Hallucinogen. There were many blue threads stretching out, and the protagonist said that these new abilities were very good because they would not have to worry about any surprises, and in the future they would serve as the foundation for his unlimited development. A question about using 20 evolution points to activate the Fog Barrier and Hallucinogen appeared on the green screen. The ball's eyes shone brightly, and he ordered the system to activate it. A bright light appeared around the tree, and Tu thought that the ability Hallucinogen was not rare at all because many plants had it, and it manifested itself in the form of secreting special substances that irritate the nervous system of insects. Gray fog filled the space. Gray smoke hung above the forest. Tu thought that if he were the person he was a year ago, he would never have imagined that he would be able to use these 2 abilities together. The protagonist thought that he was at the first stage now, but in the future, he would be able to reach much greater heights. There were bright sparks in the middle of the fog, and Zu said that he wanted to go find the axe snake immediately and take revenge, but it would be bad if he attracted the attention of a stronger enemy. Because of it, he thought that the snake should be destroyed, but for now, he needed to be patient and wait until there were no stronger enemies in his area. The ball shot brightly, saying that then would be the time to settle the matter with the axe snake once and for all. The girl with long hair called out to the red fox and shouted that her father was not in sight, and Zhong immediately turned around. Xing turned around when Zhu said that he was right behind them and suggested that the closer someone was to him, the stronger the influence of the abilities. The bull with golden horns approached them and asked the fox to lead the 2 sisters through the ravine. A purple ball was visible in the hollow which asked Shoking and Xing not to tell their grandfather anything. The 2 girls were sitting on a red fox that was flying through the air. Xing said with a wide smile that a lot had happened today, because they had been chased by a herd of beasts in the morning, and now they were riding on a huge fox. Zeno King cheeks were red said that this was the first time she had rushed through the mountains and forests so fast, and it felt great. Zohong smiled as the girls thanked him. The purple ball emitted a bright light saying that it was time to begin the second round of enhancements. The system provided information on the mutated branches and roots. The evolution points were 129. Bright streaks of light appeared around the crown of the tree, and the system reported that 50 branches and 9 roots had been enhanced. The system said that the enhancement of the hallucinogen was equal to 10 evolution points. The improvement of the fog screen was equal to the same amount. That evening, all the wild beasts within a radius of 10 kilometers around you forgot about peace. A white fog was visible above the green forest. Each of them subconsciously felt that at that very moment the birth of a new overlord was initiated. Light was visible through the branches. The tree bark was radiating radiance. Zhu frowned and said that finally all the planned efforts were completely completed. The wolf ran to the wooden cage inside, which sat another predator. The wolves tensed up hearing the noise from outside. The predator with bright red eyes roared loudly and beat its sharp teeth. Tu, sitting in the hollow, watched the wolves, saying that it seemed that the fog enhanced by the hallucinogen really affected living beings, but it became a little noisy. The system provided information about the fog screen and the hallucinogen, which immediately reached the second level. The bull with golden horns chased the boar. There were 50 mutated branches and 9 roots. The system described the 2 skills that Cu had obtained. The ball looked up and said that it only had 14 evolution points left, and it was already 50 points short of improving its innate properties. The green screen showed information about the super regeneration property. The protagonist had 14 evolution points left. The tree's roots went deep into the ground, and Zhu said that its main route extended for 100 meters. A cave with water was visible, and the protagonist said that he could now feel the continuous bubbling of spiritual energy. Suyu's eyes were shining, and he said that he did not expect that the underground river under its base contained a huge amount of an unknown substance, and it could be called a river of spiritual energy. The roots burst out from the ground, destroying it, and Tsiu said that Zhao King and Zhao would be scared when they heard this. A hawk flew to the tree branch. The two birds sat on a branch. The hawk flapped its wings and screamed loudly. Tsiu looked at the bird in shock. Inside the tree, the protagonist asked if the hawks really failed to find traces of the axe snake. He guessed that he had caused serious damage to it last time. The bird sat on the branch, and Zhu said that they should continue searching because the snake would definitely come back, and it would definitely not resist such a temptation. The wolves roared loudly inside the cage. The vines was shining brightly. He hit the animals, causing them to squeal in pain. Tsiu frowned and shouted at them not to irritate him. The two sisters frowned, and Xing shouted that the protagonist was bullying the wolves again. Xing and Xing King walked next to the red fox, and Zhou asked why they returned so quickly. The girl took hold of the cage and said that it was wrong to treat animals so roughly. She brought the cloth to the wound of the beast, which was lying on its side. The wolf clenched its teeth tightly. Xing looked at the predator carefully and said that it must be painful. The wolf narrowed its yellow eyes. Zhu was covered in sweat from astonishment. The girl fought with the monster for beef. The monster bared its sharp fangs. Lina tied it tightly and hung it in the air. The predator's eyes widened in surprise when the girl handed it a piece of meat. They began to eat with pleasure on their faces. Suddenly, the animal stretched out a paw with something lying on it. The girl turned around and told the BLLL that she brought an apple for him. She closed her eyes, biting into the strip of meat. The other sister stroked the wolves with a smile. The protagonist narrowed his eyes furiously. He was inside the hollow, saying that he did not expect that they would get along with them so quickly, and it was not surprising, because before man had to tame animals for survival, Tsiu assumed that what happened helped him gain something important. Many animals gathered around the tree, as well as Alloing and Xing King, and the protagonist said that from the very beginning of his stay in this world, it was a complete nervous strain for him. There was a hole in the ground, and Tu said that it was quite nice to relax like this sometimes. The eye of the predator shone brightly in the darkness. The next day came. The sun brightly illuminated the village. Zioling and Zio King had already woken up and were again happily going to the mountains, urging each other on. They quickly ran away from the village, and on the way Grandpa shouted at them to stop constantly running to the mountains. Everything will be fine, Grandpa, the girls answered, and ran away again. A young man approached Grandpa with a smile on his face. He looked after his sisters and said that he had not seen the girls so lively for a long time since their father left this world, adding that it was very wonderful for his sister to see them like this. The old man also looked after his granddaughters, asking why they always went to the mountains. At this time, the forest and the mountains was silent. The protagonist suddenly sneezed loudly. After that, he looked around and asked himself where his fox had disappeared. A few seconds later, he realized that Zhou Hong had run to meet the sisters. Exhaling heavily, he added that over the past half-month, the relationship between the fox and the girls had become even better than with himself. At the same time, in another part of the forest, Zhou Hong was sitting quietly and waiting for the sisters. Suddenly, girls came out from behind the trees, and seeing the fox were very happy. They rushed to her, hugging the fox. One of the sisters asked if Ko Hong was really meeting them today. After that, they climbed onto the fox's back, and the animal rushed towards the protagonist. Xing, sitting in front, turned to look at her sister, who was sitting with a very wide grin, and asked in confusion why she couldn't stop grinning. Xin King laughed ominously. The next second, she stretched out her hand, in which was a small bag, and said that she had grabbed grandfather's fertilizer for father, rich in carbohydrates. The bag emitted such a strong smell that Xing plugged her nose with her fingers. Zio King continued to say that this was so that father's foliage would become even greener and the trunk even more powerful, adding that she got up early in the morning to collect this fertilizer. After these words, she leaned towards her sister and with a crazy smile on her face said that father really likes sweets and grandfather, on top of everything else, has diabetes. Suddenly, clouds gathered in the sky, blocking the sun. Seeing this, Xing raised her head and asked if it was going to rain. After a short pause, she added that they needed to get to their father as soon as possible. At that very moment, the ground shook and a huge axe-shaped snake emerged from the rising dust. Zohong was horrified when he saw the familiar snake. The sisters sitting on the fox's back tensed up scared. The next second, the snake showed its mad grin and hissed loudly, looking at the girls with eyes full of bloodlust. The sisters' mad screams and splashes of blood were heard. At this time, abnormal paragon falcons were flying in the sky at the speed of a bullet. They were leading bees towards the protagonist. These were abnormal bees that wanted to kill the birds that disturbed them. Suddenly, a huge root of the protagonist burst out of the ground. The next second, it pierced the bee at great speed. Suyu's face with which he killed his victims was very serious. He looked at what was happening with his eyes glowing and said in his head that he had to work hard to attract the abnormal bees here, and now it was time to become his evolution points. The next second, a whole swarm of bees was subjected to countless fast and strong attacks from the protagonist. In a few seconds, all the abnormal bees died, and the protagonist laughed quite. And Yahello, the system table that appeared, said that Tu had 156 evolution points left. One of the paragar falcons suddenly landed on his huge branch and screamed loudly. The protagonist raised his head to the bird and said contentedly that he knew that he had only succeeded thanks to the paragon falcons. After these words, he handed the birds his root, from which the essence of life began to ooze. After praising the Paragon falcons, the protagonist frowned deeply and looked away, saying in his head that in fact spending his energy on developing the Paragon falcons was the right decision, because at the moment the Paragon falcons have become even stronger than before, adding that the strength of his birds has reached the 7th step of the initial stage. After a short pause, he said that it was time now. A system screen appeared in front of him asking if the protagonist wanted to use 100 evolution points to strengthen the route. Seeing that they were asking for so much, Tsu squinted and with a drop of cold sweat said to satisfy that 100 points were required to advance to the 2nd level, adding that it was very expensive, but nothing could be done. After a short pause, he said that he would strengthen one first, because now he needed to advance the strength to the peak of the 1st stage as soon as possible. After saying these words, he pressed the yes button on the system screen. After that, he screamed madly, and his entire body was enveloped in a green glow. His roots suddenly began to break out of the ground. At that very second, something began to envelop them. After a few seconds, the roots became much larger than before, and tentacles appeared all over their surface. Seeing this, the little bull standing nearby was very surprised and scared at the same time. Looks like bro is from some cartoon with those big eyes. The alpha wolves sitting in the cages were terrified. The honey badger wrapped in a liana was also very scared. Cold sweat was pouring down the main character. He was breathing heavily, looking at the ground, saying that it was incredibly painful. After these words, he exhaled in relief, picked up a huge root, and said that after evolution the root strength was far beyond his imagination. After these words, he chuckled and added that he believed that the root could easily deal with any creature at the 1st stage. Suddenly his eyes lit up and his face became very tense, after which Thu shouted that it was time to test the strength of the 2nd level. After these words, the huge root rushed towards the forest with incredible speed. Making its way through the ground, breaking through it, the root went further and further into the forest. Along the way, it grabbed all the animals, breaking trees. In one clearing, one pig knelt down holding out a flower to another pig. Suddenly, the 2nd pig was entangled in the tentacles of a root that rushed past. Explosions from the tentacle bursting out of the ground were heard throughout the forest. A few seconds later, many cocoons were hanging from the tentacle that rose above the forest, in which there were captured animals. This is a hellish sight, the protagonist said with admiration. More than 24 animals were caught by the merciless tentacle. Watching all this, the protagonist laughed and said that this was truly a considerable harvest. In an instant, all the captured victims were killed, and a notification appeared in front of Tsu, stating that the protagonist had received 210 evolution points. Below, it was written that the total number of evolution points was 267. Seeing this, the protagonist was very pleased, very happy. He said that this was simply a great feeling, adding that he was like a bag of money. The system screen showed that his 2nd level mutated roots were 1,000 meters long, and his strength and speed had reached the peak of the 1st stage. After reading this, the protagonist imagined a huge spiral beneath him and said that he would send the root underground and curl it into a protective spiral, and if danger approached the root would immediately detect it. When suddenly the honey badger began to scream very furiously. Hearing the screams, Theo looked at the captured animal and asked discontentedly what he was screaming about, adding that the honey badger should wait for Zolan to feed him. The recently captured monkey was already jumping from vine to vine as it had been released from detention for good behavior, when suddenly he said that the fox had gone for the sisters at dawn and it was already getting late. At this time, blood was dripping from the tail of the hatchet snake, and its eyes were burning with an unquenchable thirst for blood. I wonder why they haven't returned yet, Sue asked after a few seconds. Looking at the sky, he excitedly said that it would soon be dark. Suddenly, the elder Paragon Falcon flew, and noticing the bird, the protagonist immediately shouted for the to take his brothers and go look for his sisters in the forest, adding that they should not miss a single clue. Suddenly, a fox jumped out of the fog and fell to the ground with force. It was covered in bruises and a wound from which blood flowed. Seeing this, the protagonist was shocked. Zohan's eyes began to slowly close. The fox was dying from blood loss. Immediately realizing this, Theo stuck vines into the animal's body and used the essence of life to heal the fox. The system window that appeared said that the essence of life was introduced, after which it was written that the vital signs had increased. Ziyuhong, breathing heavily, opened his eyes again. The system window that appeared said that the fox's vital signs had stabilized. As soon as the protagonist read this, he screamed with beads of cold sweat, asking why there was only a fox here, and where Xing King and Xing Hong were. At this time, a strong push was heard. The snake raised dust and dirt. Hearing this, the protagonist turned his head to the side. What he saw shocked him. He saw the hand of one of the sisters. Siu's eyes lit up with rage. In the mouth of a huge axe snake was the body of a girl. She was pierced through by a huge fang. In the eyes of the snake there was hatred and anger. There was no life in Ziyu King's eyes. Xing King, the protagonist, screamed in rage. Hearing the desperate cry, the axe snake smiled madly, and pleasure appeared in its eyes. The next second it shook its head. Ziyu King's body flew into the air, and the snake immediately opened its mouth to swallow the prey. Seeing this, the protagonist immediately directed the route towards the enemy, shouting that she dare not do this. The rote gained gigantic speed, reducing the distance with the snake. Before it could eat the girl, the axe snake noticed the danger. Before it could dodge, the root struck it in the chest. "Don't you dare touch her," the protagonist shouted in rage with burning eyes. At that very second, the root grabbed Ziyu King. After that, it began to return back at great speed. There was a huge hole in the snake's body, and blood spurted from its mouth, absorbing Zay's branches. Not only transformed the appearance of the axe snake, but also endowed it with colossal strength. The eyes of the creeping burned with anger and hatred towards the protagonist. This time, it came with the intention of ending the work started and destroying the willow standing before its eyes. However, to the surprise of the snake, the willow once again strengthened and became stronger. The axe snake realized that it was still no match for the willow, and having no other choice, fled again. At this time, the wounded Xing was lying on the grass in front of the protagonist's body. Her entire body was covered in blood, and her stomach was pierced through. Seeing the girl's condition, Tsu was very scared. At that very second, he unfurled his vines, which acquired a bright green glow. He stuck them into the girl, thereby injecting the essence of life. The system window that appeared said that the essence of life had been injected. A few seconds later, it was reported that there was no increase in vital signs. Glowing healing vines were located all over the girl's body. A notification about the infusion of the essence of life appeared again. A few seconds later, it was reported that there was no increase in vital signs. It was also written that 10 evolution points had been spent. The next notification appeared asking whether the protagonist wanted to continue using the essence of life. Without a second thought, Zhu shouted for the infusion to continue, adding that there was no need to seek further permission. Cold sweat was pouring down his face, and he was tense to the point of insane tension in his head. He was talking and begging for Ziyu King to wake up. The monkey and honey badger were horrified by what they saw, and the alpha wolves in the cages barked loudly. With eyes burning with rage, the protagonist turned to the animals and ordered them to be quiet. The green glow did not subside. A fox and a buffalo stood in front of the body. Notifications appeared in front of the protagonist that the life essence was being reinfused. Immediately after that, another message appeared which said that there were no signs of life in little Xing's body. After that, a second infusion was carried out. A few seconds later, it said no signs of life. There was no more life in the girl's body, and her eyes were empty. More and more notifications appeared stating that there were no signs of life. A fox and a buffalo were leaning over the body of one of the sisters, looking very worried. There were no signs of life. Zio King did not move. The next notification said that there were no signs of life. The alpha wolves silently looked at the girl's body. There were no signs of life. Tears appeared in the eyes of the honey badger and monkey. Suddenly a message appeared which said that the evolution points were exhausted. With burning eyes, the protagonist tensely looked at the girl's lifeless body. He had no evolution points left. At this time in the village, Xing was lying unconscious on the bed. Her entire body was covered in wounds and abrasions. A doctor stood next to her, bandaging the girl's wounds. After a few minutes, he turned to Xing's grandfather, and with a very tense face covered in cold sweat, said that their village medical level was too backward, adding that he had managed to remove the poison from the arms and stomach. But while the girl was running, the poison following the blood reached the brain and heart. Hearing this, the old man was shocked to horror. The doctor continued to say that even if the girl managed to survive, what happened would Xialing for the rest of her life. The next second, other guys entered the building. The old man turned to them and asked if they had found Zio King. Lowering his head, the guy in the hat apologized and said sadly that they had found absolutely nothing. After a short pause, he added that most likely Xing had already been eaten by wild animals. Hearing this, the old man was horrified and shocked. After that, he lost consciousness. The screams of the guys who rushed to the headman were heard. One of the Paragen Falcons was watching all this through the window. He remembered everything that was happening so that he could report everything to the main character later. At this time in the forest, the protagonist looked at the body of the dead Xing with burning eyes. He said quietly and sadly that nothing good awaited Xiling either. Tears were pouring from the eyes of the honey badger tied with vines. Suddenly, the alpha wolf cage collapsed with a crunch. The protagonist quietly said that he knew before that plants could also feel. After a short pause, he added that plants could become stressed and dry out from swearing and cursing. After these words, the vine holding the honey badger let go of the animal, whose eyes were burning with rage. Ziu continued to say that music can bring joy to play and lead to abundant flowering. A paragraph falcon sat on a huge tree branch, but the protagonist suddenly said under his breath. A few seconds later, with his eyes burning with rage, he screamed in rage that he had never heard of plants being able to feel such anger. All the animals experienced exactly the same emotions. Everyone's eyes were burning with rage. Their mad grin showed how much they wanted revenge. Servants, said the protagonist, it's time for a decisive battle. Pescator Islands, an archipelago in close proximity to the continent. Over the last 6 months, the number of air crashes in its waters has reached 17. As for ships, the figure has reached 20, and these are only officially registered cases that occurred in just 6 months. Subsequently, the state was able to confirm that the space in which so many misfortunes occurred turned out to be a place of hibernation for a flock of mutated crows. And also an abnormal sea predator. It was a huge creature that had a huge body and long tentacles, at the end of one of which was a monster's mouth. A flock of crows swallowed passenger planes, and the sea predator dragged the ships to the bottom. With the rise of mutated beasts and the growth of their strength, their determination to protect their territory became stronger. Ships and passenger planes, typical of those who make a lot of noise, were the first to take the hit. The Pescators Islands Mosa zone had been transformed into a death zone. The curtain of the spiritual energy era had officially opened. At this time in the military office, a young man was shouting, reporting to the commander that since yesterday the rampage of the mutated beasts had only gotten worse and the number of wounded continued to grow. Another employee was shouting, reporting that today's check revealed that the number of zones in which the amount of spiritual energy exceeded 5,000 units was starting to steadily increase. The commander, a middle-aged man with short gray hair, turned to the employees and shouted, ordering them to process and sort all the data regarding these zones. Living organisms whose spiritual power indicator exceeded 1,000 were already capable of posing a threat to armed soldiers. As for those whose indicator exceeded 5,000, neither bullets nor any other conventional weapons could do anything to them. Suddenly, the commander was shocked by what he saw. Leaning his hands on the screen below him, which was a huge map on which red dots began to appear, he shouted, asking if there were really zones in which the indicator exceeded 5,000. When suddenly, at that very second, a red light illuminated the entire office. The commander immediately looked up at the huge screen in front of him. The entire screen was filled with errors, and above them were many red system windows on. which was written attention in the center of these windows, was another one which reported that a spiritual energy indicator exceeding 18,000 was detected. Seeing this, drops of cold flowed down the commander's face. In a state of shock, he screamed 18. After a short pause, he quietly said that it seemed that humanity extinction awaits. He finished after a few. At this time, a huge explosion occurred on the island, raising dust and dirt. Its creator was an axe snake, which was attacked by the protagonist's animals. She held a crane by the wing, which was trying to strike the constitution that determines the difference in strength between living beings. The white crane system window said it was at the initial stage of the third stage. Blood suddenly spurted out of its mouth. The buffalo, at this time having gained great speed, rushed towards the snake. The opponents, who found themselves in the face of the axe snake. The buffalo crashed into the opponent, but the snake was indifferent to this blow. The black buffalo's arm broke off, and tears appeared in his eyes. He was at the initial stage of the second stage. Not a scratch remained on the scales of the axe snake. She simply smashed, doing it with truly royal grandeur. When suddenly she felt that something was wrong. A honey badger was climbing up her back with a wild grin. Having reached the neck, he began to furiously try to tear the scales of the opponent. Suddenly blood spurted. His claws were able to break through the snake's defense. The honey badger was at the initial stage of the third stage. Suddenly he bit neck of the snake with his teeth burning. He remembered in his head how Xing fed him food. Tears appeared in his eyes, and he bit his opponent even harder. Suddenly he received a strong blow from its tail. The axe snake easily knocked down the hated honey badger. The small animal, along with the torn-off scale of the opponent, fell on the stork. A fierce battle rages as the war axe snake, a massive purple serpent-like creature with golden eyes, faces off against several agile wolves. The wolves, with their dark gray fur and glowing red eyes, leap aggressively towards the colossal snake, a prelude to a desperate confrontation. The wolf jumped on top of the snake and started punching and clawing the snake. White, it was roaring from pain, but the snake shot them away with its tail. The snake was bleeding from its eye after what the wolves had done, but we see Oswell, a leg popping out of nowhere. It was Outboy the flaming fox, that looks menacing at the snake like it wants its head gone. The snake was in shock after seeing the fox again, because they had run into each other from when they firstly meet, when they both were weak. Also when Yuzi fought it third time, trying to protect the girls, and fought the snake. The moment it had buried its sadness and tried to act cool, but the rage was flaming his heart to lash out and just be a beast and take his head. The flaming fox rushed in and took in his instincts and went for it. But the snake was red for the rematch again. I can't like the fox is like Asta from Black Clover RN. The war axe snake opens its massive jaws in a ferocious roar, its golden eyes gleaming with fury. A small, fiery red fox, wreathed in flames, darts towards its mouth, indicating a direct assault. The powerful snake clearly feels the intense anger of the red fox's fire, realizing that if this fiery adversary is left alive, it will become an immense threat that must be eliminated at all costs. The war axe snake went in for a big bite against the fire wolf, but got hit with an uppercut instead against Prime Mike Tyson. The red wolf is hovering above the air aura farming. The war axe snake is roaring cause of the uppercut it got from our boy. Then we see the red fox jumping around the snake, hitting it from every direction, and the both massive weapons goes against each other. The axe snake had built strong scales so nothing could penetrate it, and had blades on its tail and head. Then the axe snake goes in for an attack. The red fox and the axe snake are just clashing, but he realized something and questioning why he isn't dead by now. But our boy coming out like guts after the eclipse to avenge the girl, aka Casca, in this scene. And it looks like he after blood. The war axe snake's golden eye narrows, reflecting the fire's anger as the red fox launches its fierce assault. The red fox bites deeply into the war axe snake, drawing blood and showing its fierce determination with glowing red eyes. A peregrine falcon dives from the sky, enveloped in a radiant golden aura, initiating its powerful bullet dive maneuver against the war axe snake. The peregrine falcon's bullet dive strikes the war axe snake with immense force, causing a powerful impact and a blinding flash of light as the snake recoils from the blow. The war axe snake recoils from the attack, its jaws agape, as a cloud of dust and debris erupts around it, obscuring its form. The impact of the peregrine falcon's attack sends shockwaves through the air, causing the war axe snake's armor to crack open from the force. The red fox, injured and bleeding from the mouth, recovers from the battle, showcasing its resilience and determination despite the visible wounds. Several peregrine falcons soar through the air, their powerful wings and determined expressions indicating their readiness to continue the fight. A peregrine falcon's eye glows with fierce intensity, focused and unwavering, as it prepares for another attack, its beak hardened with resolve. The war axe snake lies coiled and partially obscured by white smoke or dust, its massive body damaged, signaling its retreat or defeat. Multiple peregrine falcons spread their radiant, golden wings, soaring above a lush, green landscape, their forms glowing as if empowered by the sun itself, having successfully inflicted damage upon the war axe snake. The war axe snake's head is depicted in a close-up, its mouth wide open in a cry of pain, displaying rows of sharp teeth. Its golden eyes convey a sense of shock and bewilderment at the ferocity of its attackers, especially after the bullet dive from the peregrine falcons. A peregrine falcon's eye gleams with fierce determination, its beak poised for attack, as golden energy crackles around it. The red fox, its face splattered with blood, bares its fangs in a savage snarl, its eyes burning with intensity as it prepares to strike again. The narration emphasizes that not only the war axe snake, but even the red fox itself, felt the shock of the fierce battle. The peregrine falcon, enveloped in golden light, continues its powerful dive. The text highlights that this attack is more than just strength. It's a sacrifice, a burning of life itself to bring forth this immense power. An illustration of a speeding wheel, creating intense friction and sparks, metaphorically represents the incredible speed and heat generated by the peregrine falcon's desperate attack. The narration explains the perilous consequence of such extreme speed. The body's air friction generates immense heat, causing it to burn and perish, underscoring the self-sacrificing nature of the peregrine falcon's attack. A peregrine falcon, glowing with golden energy, soars with incredible speed, delivering devastating damage to its enemy, embodying the ultimate sacrifice for its cause. In a radiant golden aura, a squadron of peregrine falcons takes flight, their combined strength and unwavering loyalty forming a powerful force. The scene shifts to a flashback as a wolf, its snout covered in blood, devours a smaller animal, a stark reminder of the brutal cycle of nature. A young, frightened chick, with wide, vulnerable eyes, looks up from its nest, symbolizing the innocent lives caught in the harsh reality of the wild. UZU, in its initial form as a mysterious purple energy sphere, carefully places a nest full of small chicks into its branches. The text conveys a sense of hope descending into darkness, marking a pivotal moment of salvation for the young birds. Under UZU's care, the once helpless peregrine falcons now soar freely across the lush landscape, their powerful wings a testament to the new life and hope they found, an image of thriving freedom. A peregrine falcon, now a majestic and powerful creature, cuts through the clear blue sky. Its sharp eyes and strong build a symbol of its profound transformation, hinting at the potential for growth that lies ahead for all under UZU's influence. A figure lies wounded and bloody on the ground, possibly a human, surrounded by what appears to be discarded weapons, indicating a recent struggle. A close-up reveals UZU in its initial form, a pulsing purple core surrounded by shadowy, claw-like branches, hinting at its true powerful, mysterious nature. The peregrine falcon is shown in a close-up, its sharp eye fixated, exuding confidence and a focused resolve in the midst of battle. The peregrine falcon unleashes a powerful golden energy blast at the war axe snake, creating a dramatic clash of forces in the sky. Another intense close-up of a peregrine falcon in mid-flight, its eye burning with fierce determination as it prepares to strike its adversary. The war axe snake's golden eye is shown in a tight close-up, portraying shock and perhaps confusion as it faces the relentless attacks. A dramatic shot of the war axe snake being struck by another powerful energy attack, its massive body writhing and glowing with intense energy. The impact of the ongoing battle causes a whirlwind of leaves and debris, indicating a powerful force in action, possibly from UZU's attacks. The red fox, a blur of fiery motion, charges with intense speed, its eyes focused on its target, ready to deliver another devastating blow. The war axe snake, with its mouth wide open and sharp teeth exposed, is hit by a golden energy blast, signifying the combined assault of UZU's allies. The war axe snake's body is pierced by a continuous golden beam of energy, its scales visibly straining from the intense attack, highlighting its struggle. The close-up on the war axe snake's head shows its eyes filled with surprise and anguish as it takes the full brunt of the relentless assault from UZU and its allies. The war axe snake is violently struck by a golden beam, its massive body thrashing amidst a splash of white energy and debris, showing the immense force of the ongoing assault. A peregrine falcon is depicted in a state of rapid motion, with elements around it suggesting its body is undergoing extreme stress or being torn apart by the sheer speed of its attack, hinting at the self-destructive nature of its bullet dive. The red fox streaks across the battlefield, a blur of motion and raw power, indicating its continued aggressive involvement in the fight against the war axe snake. Amidst billowing clouds of smoke, the red fox unleashes another fiery assault, with golden energy streaks illuminating the scene as it relentlessly attacks the formidable war axe snake. Two peregrine falcons appear in the thick of battle, partially obscured by explosions and smoke, their fierce expressions and poised forms signifying their crucial role in the relentless coordinated attack. The war axe snake's mouth is agape in a silent scream, revealing rows of sharp fangs as white smoke swirls around its head, signifying either a roar of pain or a desperate counterattack. A peregrine falcon, with traces of blood on its beak, grapples with a foe, while in the foreground, a wolf, also bearing wounds, lunges forward, indicating the brutal, close-quarters combat taking place amongst UZU's allies. The battlefield is shrouded in thick white smoke as several wolves, some clearly injured and others roaring defiantly, press their attack, embodying their unwavering resolve amidst the chaos. The red fox is shown in a close-up, its face streaked with blood, its eyes glowing with predatory intensity, highlighting its fierce determination and combat prowess. The war axe snake's head is ravaged by dark energy and cracks, indicating severe damage and weakening, as a menacing aura surrounds it, signifying its imminent defeat. In a tight close-up, the red fox's face is a mask of aggression, its bloody snout and piercing red eyes locked in a snarl as it prepares to deliver a final, decisive blow to the war axe snake. The war axe snake's head, now battered and bloody, expresses a fierce and desperate anguish in its golden eyes as it glares at the relentless red fox, signaling its final, tormented moments before the fatal strike. The war axe snake recoils violently as a fiery streak, likely the red fox, delivers a powerful blow. The snake's body contorts in pain, amidst a blur of speed and impact, as the allies of UZU continue their relentless assault. Amidst the chaotic white energy of the battlefield, a peregrine falcon is consumed by the powerful blast, its body seemingly dissolving, highlighting the self-sacrificing nature of its bullet dive attack. The red fox lands with a powerful impact, creating a crater in the ground and sending debris flying, showcasing its explosive strength and agility. The red fox launches a focused attack amidst the swirling white smoke, its fiery form leaving golden streaks as it charges forward, driving the war axe snake back. A peregrine falcon emerges from the white smoke, its fierce gaze fixed on the war axe snake, indicating its strategic positioning for another strike. In the foreground, another injured falcon, likely from bullet dive, lies, showing the cost of battle. The war axe snake's massive head, with its gaping maw and sharp fangs, is surrounded by clouds of white smoke, conveying its desperation and intense struggle. The war axe snake recoils in pain, its body contorted as it tries to escape the relentless onslaught, a clear sign of its weakening state. A wide shot reveals a desolate landscape, littered with rocks and sparse vegetation, over which the war axe snake desperately attempts to flee, leaving a trail of white smoke in its wake. The text, "He is escaping," confirms its retreat. The war axe snake, now reduced to a smaller, more desperate form, slithers rapidly through the barren landscape, with UZU's presence indicated by the white streaks of energy pursuing it. The text, "He is going back to his lair. He is going to hide there and recover," reveals its intention to seek refuge and heal. The scene changes to a small forest, where UZU, in its true form as a magical tree with luminous roots and a glowing core, stands firm. It is surrounded by an expanding aura, demonstrating its immense power and growth. The text confirms, yes, this is Yuzu, the magic tree. As the chaotic battle subsides, a close-up of Yuzu's glowing purple core and radiating roots highlights its mystical nature, now more vibrant and powerful than ever, preparing for what's next. Yuzu's purple core intensifies, pulsing with raw power as tendrils of energy extend outward, not merely as expansion, but as a deliberate, strategic setup for the next phase of its plan. The war axe snake, with its imposing serpentine body and distinctive axe-like protrusion, is coiled in a dark void, unaware of the impending ambush that Yuzu is setting. The war axe snake's head rears back, its eyes wide with alarm, and prominent exclamation marks highlight its surprise and panic as it suddenly realizes it has been lured into a trap. Yuzu's attack strikes the war axe snake, leaving a large, dark, shattered area on its body. The snake's scales crack and splinter amidst an explosive burst of white energy, signifying the powerful impact of the ambush. A dark and mysterious forest, filled with intertwined trees and shadowy branches, looms from below, hinting at Yuzu's true form and its strategic control over this environment, setting the stage for the ambush. From behind, two human-like figures observe the war axe snake, which is now enveloped by an ominous purple cloud as it desperately attempts to flee the ambush set by Yuzu. The war axe snake's head is caught in a moment of confusion and surprise, its mouth agape and golden eyes betraying its shock as it fully comprehends the trap it has fallen into. Massive red tendrils, extensions of Yuzu's power, erupt from the ground, coiling and striking at the war axe snake with incredible force, beginning its ultimate constriction. The war axe snake is overwhelmed, its body ensnared and crushed by multiple red and black tendrils, demonstrating the full force of Yuzu's strategic ambush and relentless attack. A close-up reveals Yuzu's purple core glowing intensely, surrounded by dark, sharp leaf-like structures, a clear visual representation of its active power as it controls the tendrils to defeat the war axe snake. The war axe snake is impaled by numerous red and black tendrils, its body contorted in agony, vividly portraying its agonizing defeat as Yuzu tears it apart. The war axe snake is completely enveloped and constricted by Yuzu's red and black tendrils, signaling its total defeat and the absorption of its essence. As its life force is drained, a cluster of glowing green tendrils emerges from the ground around Yuzu, a clear sign of its growth and increased power from consuming the formidable foe. With the war axe snake utterly vanquished and its power absorbed, Yuzu's purple core intensifies, taking on a sinister, grinning expression formed by dark energy, radiating an intense purple glow. A final, chilling challenge echoes. Let's see how you'll escape now. A declaration of absolute dominance before the final, explosive force takes hold. The war axe snake cries out in excruciating pain, blood gushing from its mouth as a brilliant, explosive force engulfs its head, marking the final, devastating blow from Tsuyu and its allies. A massive torrent of white, frothy water explodes upwards from the ground, signifying the sheer power of Yuzu's devastating attack that has brought down the colossal war axe snake. The war axe snake lies defeated on fractured ground, its body broken and bleeding, with a severed tail indicating the violence of its demise. This panel confirms its ultimate destruction. Tsuyu, in its shadowy, powerful form with a glowing eye, stands triumphant. Its command, "Get up!" echoes across the devastated landscape, not to its defeated foe, but to its loyal allies, signaling the continuation of their journey and struggle for survival.